Hey, I hope you're doing well. In this complete guide, we are going to be covering everything you need to know about an epic battle, how to write one, how to describe one, what comes before and after one. Basically, all your favorite things in an action movie are going to be right here, right now. So without any further ado, let's get right into it. Now, here's the first step. It's to know your objective. You have to determine the purpose of the battle scene. Is it a climatic showdown between heroes and villains, a turning point in the story, or a moment of personal triumph or tragedy? For example, in The Lord of the Rings, the Battle of Helm's Deep, it was a critical turning point for the forces of good as they made their final stand against Saruman's army. There was a specific purpose for that battle scene to be there. It was to show how these people united together to fight this greater evil. Your battle scenes can't just be a bunch of action. They have to have something in them that makes the reader feel like there's a purpose to it. Violence without meaning is really just petty. So once you find your objective, we have to go on to the next step, which is to establish the setting. You have to describe the battlefield's attributes, such as its terrain, like a dense forest or a snowy plain. The weather conditions. Is it rainy, foggy, snowy, super sunny? All these different aspects are going to hugely affect the battle. And like, what time of the day is it? Is it night, dawn, dusk, noon? It's good to describe these things before the battle begins. That way you can fully focus on all the action without taking more time to describe things that aren't necessarily important at the time. So in The Last Kingdom, the Battle of Athaindun takes place in a muddy field during a heavy rainstorm, creating a grim and challenging environment for the warriors. So you have to make sure that the readers know what they're trying to picture in this battle, because a battle out at sea is going to look a lot different than one on land, and a battle out in the mountains is going to be a lot different than a battle in the desert. After choosing your setting, I'm sure that you probably already have it in mind because you're about to write a chapter in your story, most likely, on this battle. So once you choose that, we'll get right into step 3, which is choosing a perspective. You have to decide between focusing on a single character's experiences, providing insights into the thoughts and feelings of multiple characters, or describing the battle firsthand from a participant's perspective. If you want a more emotional approach to a battle, I would go with first person, as this will truly allow the reader to experience everything in the battle, all the horrors, right? You can have them suited up in armor, their sword at their side, as they look to both sides of them to see their fellow warriors dying left and right as they're charging across the battlefield. While, say, a third person perspective would allow you to zoom in on multiple people. You could have one person on the cavalry charge, so the reader gets to experience that, but not as deeply as, say, if it was first person. And then you can have another one who's an archer shooting at dragons or something as they come in flying. And then another one could be the king himself, standing in back, directing his other commanders to command the different legions as they attack. Of course, you could also go with multiple first person perspectives, such as in the Game of Thrones, where battles are often described from various character perspectives, allowing readers to witness the same conflict, but from unique perspectives. So after choosing your perspective, most likely you already have a main character and they're probably going to be your perspective. But I wanted to throw this step in there because you might have multiple characters going on and not really know which one to focus in on during this battle. Now, the battle hasn't even started yet, though. So we first have to build tension and anticipation, right? You can see the army far off in the field. Your horses are gently neighing or whining as you look to both sides of you to see nervous soldiers all around. It's as if you can hear a pin drop as you get ready to charge. You're just waiting for that one trumpet sound. But then you hear a roar across the sky as a dragon starts gliding in. See, all of this builds the tension before the battle even begins. And even before we get to that location where the battle's taking place, we can still foreshadow the battle in earlier scenes. You can foreshadow from even multiple chapters before. You can show your characters planning in the war tent, the maneuvers of the army, different logistics such as that, or you can talk about this growing darkness or this incoming force that's threatening their kingdom, so they have to rally together. All these things can start happening many chapters before to build tension. Your readers should, by the time the battle starts, have a very good idea of what the stakes are. Like, what's going to happen if your characters lose. They might not die, but what would a retreat cause? What would happen if they won? If they won, would they actually like win the entire war? Or is this just a simple battle on a much broader scale? Are there secrets to unlock if they raid the enemy's camp? All these different things your reader might want to know before the battle begins so that they can fully grasp the gravity of the situation. Now, step 5, after you have built tension throughout the chapters, is to involve characters. Now, odds are you are already planning on involving characters, but I just want to dive in a little bit more into the motivations, fears, and personal stakes for all these characters. Say in The Hobbit, The Battle of Five Armies, it involves characters with different motives. You have Thorin's desire for treasure, Bar's quest to just simply protect his town, and then you have Bilbo's loyalty to his friends. So even though a battle seems clear cut, as it's just, your side versus the other side, everybody there, every single soldier has a different, unique reason as to why they're there and why they're fighting. Some are there protecting their homes, some are there for vengeance. Your characters are no different. So it'll be very helpful and engaging for the readers to know why the characters are in this battle to begin with. It could be a reason, such as, they were drafted in, but I think it's a lot more interesting when there's personal vendettas or personal responsibilities that are putting them in this high risk situation. This can also be the same way for the opposing side. A little while back, we talked about different perspectives. If you want, you can also shine a light on the enemy's perspectives. They might be the enemies to your characters, but really, your characters are the enemy to these enemies. So it can really add depth to your story if you try to validate the reason why these opposing forces are even trying to fight your characters. Oftentimes in a story, you'll find readers simply rooting for whichever side their perspective is on. But if you switch perspectives, at least for a few moments, perhaps showing, like in the general's encampment, why it's so important for them to win against these characters, then the reader might find an understanding for these enemies, and in fact maybe change sides even if the perspective is still on the characters. So it can add a lot more depth and intrigue to your story. Step 6 is now to use descriptive language. You have to use powerful verbs and sensory details to immerse readers in the battle. You have to describe the sights, sounds, smells, and tactile sensations of combat. You can describe the sight of 1,000 shining armor plates lining the field. You can hear the sounds of trumpets, men, and horses as they fall or rise to the occasion. You can smell the sweat on everyone's brow and the horses as they get ready to charge into what seems like certain death. We can look at the Iliad, for example, by Homer. When Achilles is dueling with Hector, it's filled with vivid imagery, such as the clash of bronze and the dust rising from their feet. You also want to keep in mind, though, that you don't want to be overly descriptive as it will simply slow down the narrative, and usually you want battles to be extremely exciting and fast-paced. But we'll get into that in a few steps down the line when we cover varying the sentence lengths. The next step is to show and don't tell. Now, it can be tempting for the writer to tell all the different maneuvers and such going on in the battle, but it's a lot better to do so from a character's perspective. So instead of saying there was a cavalry charge and then a dragon came in, but it was shot down by a skilled archer, you can instead go into first person with this archer. He's firing at the oncoming cavalry charge. His comrades are dying from arrow fire every second. And that's when he hears this loud roar. He looks to his right to see this dragon coming in, getting ready to unleash hell and fire upon his ranks. So he turns and quickly draws another arrow, takes a deep breath, and fires. The dragon screams and nails him right in the neck. And then he crashes right in between the cavalry charge and the archer, creating a temporary trench of flesh. That's a lot more interesting than just saying a dragon was shot down or that there was a dragon to begin with. This you can truly sense and be there with him. You can be there with the archer as they're facing this huge threat. You can also show the emotions going through these characters' heads, like watching their friends die as they're dueling with this opposing enemy. They can hear the cries that just sends a shot of blood pounding through their chest, wanting to help, wanting to do more to save their friends, but not being able to. We can look at the Red Badge of Courage as an example. The protagonist's fear and confusion during his first battle are vividly conveyed through his thoughts and sensory perceptions, just like this, just like how his heart was pounding, as other hearts were not pounding anymore. This brings us to step 8, which is varying the sentence structure. You want to use short, intense sentences to convey urgency and tension, while longer sentences can provide moments of reflection and description. So what I like to do is personally start with longer sentences as I'm describing like the setting and like things leading up to the battle, and then as the battle gets more and more close, the sentences keep on shortening. And then when the battle actually begins, it's extremely short. And then once the battle starts to fade, or like when it starts to stop, then the sentences start to get slowly larger. You can also use longer sentences for heartfelt moments, like when your character is holding their friend in their arms because, they were just shot by an arrow. This would be like a heartfelt scene that you wouldn't really want to rush. It's almost as if time would stop there for those two characters while the battle was raging around them. So now I already talked a little bit about emotional impact, such as, their heart pumping as their friends were killed. But I want to talk about how this can aid in character arcs and growth. You can really use the battle as a crucible for character development. Show how the experience changes or challenges your characters' personal growth or transformation. Now, these traumas that they get from this battle, either like losing a limb or losing a friend, will forever really be with them. It's going to be very hard for them to fully recover. However, they can still grow and become stronger from this hurt, from this pain. From pain, we always get stronger. Our pain threshold will sometimes increase, or we'll learn lessons from this pain that we wouldn't have otherwise learned. So take this really skilled swordsman, for example. He was like taking on 3 baddies at one time, but he got caught up in the moment, allowing his other friends to lose formation and slowly be overwhelmed until they were killed. He would obviously learn from his mistakes, even though there was no way to fix them again. You could explore that trauma throughout the next chapters after the battle, as he tries to fix his own mind, as it slowly drives him to madness the mistakes that he made that costed his friends' lives. So really, there's nothing like a battle that will change a character that much. Unless, of course, you have other traumatic events going on in your story. But usually, a battle is one of the most traumatic events that can possibly happen. Now, step 11 is to simply maintain clarity. It can be very tempting to want to describe every piece of armor on this approaching enemy. But really, it's best to do that before the battle begins, such as like when they're lining up across the field. Then you could start describing how each soldier was dressed. But now, say if your character is going to fight like almost like the big boss, then you can take a moment to describe how this leader looked different and more dangerous than the other warriors surrounding him. You also want to use the character names and pronouns consistently. The last thing that you want is your reader to be like reading through this like absolutely action-packed scene. It's like super exciting. Everything is just flowing so smoothly. And then there's like this wording where it's like he stabbed him with a cry. And then you aren't really sure who this he and him is. So then you have to go back and like reread it, try to figure it out, while all of that excitement slowly slips away because you're busy trying to figure out what the writer meant. You don't want that to happen to your readers, so just keep everything concise and clear when it comes to attributing different actions to different characters. It's also a very fun idea to use strategic and tactical details. You can describe the movements of different units and platoons across the battlefield. I have this huge whiteboard over here, so I actually like erased everything and drew out the entire map from like a bird's eye view. And then I illustrated the different squadrons, the different like troops, different like cavalry charges, and then I used arrows to show like where they were going and what was happening on the battlefield in real time. That way I could better describe it. I find the strategic and tactical details extremely interesting because it shows the skill that the generals had when fighting. Now, of course, you do want to do a little bit of research here just to make sure that stuff makes sense. Unless you have this very different form of fighting, such as maybe it's with watermelons or something, then you have to come up with your own strategies to make that seem like realistically sound. But you always want to add a little bit of depth to the strategies and stuff to get your readers thinking about like what could have gone better, what went wrong, and how these strategies affected the battle. You don't want your heroes just to simply win because they're the heroes. You want actual logical reasons as to how they were able to overcome the opposing army. The strategic and tactical details solves that problem. Now, this is the last part. It's the aftermath. You have to conclude the battle scene by addressing the immediate aftermath, such as the opposing enemy retreating, then describe the physical and emotional consequences, casualties, and the impact on the overall story. We want to remember that even though this is fictional, war has real effects. And as writers, it's our responsibility and really our duty to portray those deep emotions and very dark topics in a fun and creative way. That's why we write, really. Really, everything that we ever write about has already happened to someone somewhere. Maybe the theme is different, maybe the setting is different, the time, the place. All these things are different, but these emotions that we try to give our readers to experience have already been happening to thousands and millions of people every second, every year. Nothing's new when it comes to these emotions and experiences that these people are going through. So we have to make sure that our battle reflects those traumas that so many brave people have faced. We can't just have all of our people walking away free. That wouldn't be respectful of the true loss of war. So I try to make it a point. Every large battle, I have to kill off at least one major character. Not necessarily my main character, but just someone who the readers are going to miss or someone that the characters are going to miss. I think that this is the responsible way to do it, to truly portray war for what it is, a horrible and traumatic experience for all those who face it. As writers, we really only retell the stories of others that aren't in the history books. Like I was saying, everything that we're writing about has already been experienced by someone. Maybe in the future, maybe in a different way in the past. But we have to do them justice by portraying these emotions and experiences in a responsible way. It can still be fun, it can still be creative, but we have to have respect for the realities of war. And I think that's it for this complete guide. If you enjoyed, please like and subscribe. And if you want to have a free coaching introductory call with me, feel free to book a time below. Just go down into the description, copy and paste the Calendly link, and choose whichever time you want. We'll hop on for about a 30-minute call, and there we can work on whatever you want. If you have this really cool story idea, but you aren't really sure where to start, we can actually start writing the first chapter with you. Or say if you want to structure your story better, or work on character arcs, or the overall story arc, I can also help you with that. Or if you just want more creativity and imagination into your story, book a call with me and we can get all that stuff going. I want to get all of you on your way to writing your very own story and publishing your very own book as soon as possible. So get back to writing, book a call with me, and I'll see you in the next video.